Kim is profoundly and severely deaf, but that's never been a barrier for her. She's proved countless times that deafness is not a restricting disability. In fact, from talking to Kim, you get the feeling that it's just a bit of a hassle. Kim is a first-year social welfare student, and being the only deaf student at the institute, she's had to lay most of the groundwork.
Deaf people have never really gone on to tertiary education. It's only, we seem to be scattered in different institutes, and there seems to be just one of us here and there and everywhere, and we seem to be just struggling through the course. And there's been nothing really assembled. So I believe now's the time where we should start to make noises and really start to get some structures assembled.
Skills most students take for granted, such as taking notes or watching films, seemed impossible. But Kim found ways to get around most of the obstacles.
At the moment, with the note-taking, I've had a lot of teething problems. It's really difficult to take someone to take lecture notes and you get their interpretation of what the lecture was about, where now I'm trying it out on a type transcript on trial, and I'm finding that much more effective, and I'm able to take my own lecture notes.
A major problem is money. According to the Commonwealth Rehabilitation Service, Kim has the basic skills to get a job, and therefore she's not entitled to any financial assistance. She has lodged an appeal with the service, but in the meantime, she's not waiting around for miracles to happen. Kim sent out 500 letters to local businesses asking for assistance. She got back $4,000, which will go towards tutorials.
I'm using it at the moment for tuition, additional tutorial assistance to help me with terminology and the jargon of the course, because of my lip reading skills I'm not able to, sometimes I can't understand the word and sometimes I can't pronounce it either. And sometimes with the silence in the letters you can't sort of say the word, so it makes it a little bit difficult. And that's what
Kim hopes to make it a little easier for other hearing impaired people.
I'm not really sure. I think it might be somewhere between the deaf and the hearing world, but somewhere where I bridge both worlds together somewhere along the line, I hope.
Members of the Newcastle branch of the Police Association met this morning to discuss several issues, including the future of the Glesic brothers. The brothers were sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of a police officer in Toronto 12 years ago. Since then, it's been a concern of police that they serve their full term. There was an outcry earlier this month when it was learned that the Release on Licence Board had recommended an early release for the Glesics. Police Association President Tony Day met with the Police and Corrective Services Minister last week in a bid to have the recommendation overturned. Today, he claimed success.
They deserve that life penalty, and the life penalty was the one that was given. There was no parole period, and we believe it should be life imprisonment for the term of their natural life. So at this time, that decision, according to the Minister, has certainly been reversed.
The Police Association newsletter also claims that common sense prevailed and the decision was reversed, with both killers to remain in jail. However, this afternoon, a spokesman for the Corrective Services Minister, Michael Yabsley, said the recommendation hadn't been reversed, only reviewed. A final decision was still being reached and could be weeks away. Tony Day says that's not how he understands the matter. He says industrial action can't be ruled out if the Minister fails to fight legal moves for the release of the Glesics.
Industrial action was certainly being contemplated by the police in the Newcastle area, with ourselves as the leaders in the association, and we know and understand the feelings of the police here. If the Minister is prepared to take this matter and fight it in the courts, and we will certainly be guided by the judge's decision, and I feel quite certain that we would be fair in going that way.
Since 1944, farmers have given these paddocks a wide berth. That's because the fields have been sown with thousands of rounds of 25-pound artillery shells by Australian troops training for war. The land is now owned by Tocal Ag College. Thanks to a project by the Department of Agriculture, the Army and the Air Force, the 20-hectare property is about to be cleared. Major David Thomas is certain live explosives will be uncovered.
We believe that from the amount of scrap, munition scrap that we've found, yes, there is a very good indication that that's a very good indication that we will find something while we're here.
Is it a risky business?
No, we don't believe that it is a risky business. It's a matter of having the correctly trained people for the job and following procedures and safety precautions, and we very, very rarely have an accident.
The troops have sophisticated metal detecting equipment, including computer graphs of magnetic activity beneath the soil. The operation will take 8 men, 6 weeks. There's only one way to ensure that the property is completely clear of explosives, and that's to cover every square metre on foot. By the time the men leave here, they will have each walked 200 kilometres, taking each step very carefully. When they do make a find, the Army has a bomb disposal expert standing by. The Army doesn't believe it can ever claim to have completely cleared the site, but they say farmers will probably be safer out here than residents in the suburbs. This array of grenades wasn't uncovered in country paddocks, they were all discovered in family homes. The Army believes many more will turn up as World War II veterans begin to die out, leaving their deadly souvenirs to be found by later generations. Tom Hilston, NBN News. About 30 police carried out a line search through paddocks surrounding the murdered man's home. At one stage, a shotgun cartridge was located, although police don't believe it was connected with the killing. After several hours of painstaking sweeps across marshy countryside, police called off the search. Although a ground search failed to locate the weapon, police divers are expected to carry out a more difficult hunt through reeds and adjoining marshes. In the meantime, police are appealing to the public for more information. They want to hear from any motorists who may have been on Lenigan's Drive at about midnight on Friday, August the 25th, or early on the morning of the 26th. It was about that time that 49-year-old John Frederick Brown was shot to death while he slept in the bedroom of his home. Despite extensive interviews with other people in the house at the time, detectives still have only sketchy outlines of how the killer entered the room and later escaped. They say they will extend their inquiries to a wider number of Mr. Brown's associates.
The South Newcastle Lions will be out to make it 2 premierships on the trot after their brilliant win last year. It was a great year for the Lions and a super comeback for a club that had nearly folded during the early 80s. But minor premiers Western Suburbs will be out to regain the mantle of top dog, a position they held comfortably through the late 70s. It was evident throughout the Newcastle area today that the build-up to this all-important clash for 1989 is far less impressive than in days gone by. Many devout league followers can recall the pre-grand final hype of old, something that was in short supply today. Both leagues clubs were dressed up with T-shirts specially printed and the sponsor's jumper on show, but in the streets, little or no indication that the local rugby league grand final was even on. 2 banks in New Lambton got into the swing of things with jumpers, balloons and banners, and at the junction a few streamers and balloons in the village was the only reminder of the big match, along with mannequins dolled up to look the part. 2 key players for the Lions, hooker Richard Jones and 5'8" Tim Butler, were at work as usual on the eve of the biggest match of the year. For Jones, experience will be South's key to victory.
Yeah, Mike, 10 of last year's team played in the grand final and we feel that should get us through the game. Some of the blokes will know how to treat a grand final atmosphere and that'll be the name of the game.
With the early part of the match to be played in the forwards, if the ball gets to the backs, they have to take every opportunity.
We've got blokes like Nick O'Brien and Peter Parr. Peter Sleep out there, and I think they can do the job pretty well when we get the opportunities.
For coach Paul Merlo, the Western Suburbs backs are what he fears most.
Mainly probably out wide, they tend to set it up a bit and backline it, but we've done our homework there, so we should be pretty right from out there.
The Rosellas last won the competition in 1984 after great success in the early 80s. Mal Graham played in the triumphs for Western as the present captain coach feels just a little bit of added pressure.
Well, I suppose in the dual role as captain coach, I've sort of got pressure all over really. I've had pressure all season, hoping that we'd make the grand final. We've achieved that result now, and especially in 3 grades. Now it's up to me and to go on and achieve the ultimate goal and win the grand final in the first season as captain coach.
And it doesn't worry Graham that Souths have won all 3 encounters this year.
It doesn't worry me at all. The grand finals are a completely different ball game. Competition games are gone and finished. Favourites have been beaten on grand final day. Like I said, all the pressure's on South. There's none on us at all.
A stop-off at Wickham's Awabakal Aboriginal Coordination Centre this morning signalled the end of an extensive 4-day tour throughout the Hunter by Colin Markham. Having only held the Aboriginal Affairs shadow portfolio for 3 months, Mr Markham said he had little idea just how severe the problems facing the region's 6,000 Aborigines are. But after meeting with community leaders this morning, he has gained new and very disturbing insight.
They're saying that they've got not enough funding to be able to provide the services to the best of their ability. And most of the people, and I could say all the people that I've spoken to, are very dedicated and very concerned and very caring people.
But Mr Markham says the problem does not only lie with lack of funding and lack of support from the community at large. He says the living patterns of the Hunters Aborigines are also causing big headaches, as social workers try desperately to make their work stretch across a vast area.
They're spread out over a big area, and that's what makes these service providers that much more stressed, because they haven't got the funds to be able to get out there and see that many people over such a wide and varied area of this great Hunter Valley region.
Mr Markham will take his findings from the tour back to State Parliament, but he has also agreed to return to the Hunter again soon to meet with a large gathering of Aborigines to further discuss their needs.
"96 young athletes from New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and the ACT are competing for 2 shields, the Colgate Shield for the best performed state in the Relay Championships and the Bendigo Shield for the best performed state in the Individual Championships. Proud to be wearing their state colours, the athletes were supported in the opening ceremony by a combined Blackwell's Coal Point Primary School band. The Carnival is now in its 4th year and the organisation of such an event encompasses more than just turning up on the day.
It takes in everything from organising, billeting the children to having a band play at the opening ceremony to inviting the guests to setting up the course. It's something that's not done by yourself. You have a lot of people to help out.
In welcoming everyone to the Hunter Valley and Lake Macquarie, Neil Shering stressed the importance of good competition as well as having some fun.
We are very pleased to host the Australian Schools Cross Country Exchange in 1989, and we hope everyone here today and then on Thursday not only compete well, but enjoy yourselves in this exchange.
Today, 4 age groups raced in relays over a 2,000 metre course. And it's not the easiest of courses to compete on with steep climbs and rough tracks, but the times that were recorded were brilliant. Victoria regained the Bendigo Shield by 1 point from New South Wales, with South Australia next followed by the ACT. Victoria had a win in the under-10 boys and seconds in the 11 girls, 11 boys and the 12-13 girls and boys events. In the under-10 girls, the first half of the race was pretty close with the main battle between New South Wales and Victoria. The home state then opened up a gap on the 3rd leg and came home strongly to record a very smart victory. The individual events are on Thursday.
Grieving relatives were joined by a wide cross-section of John Brown's racing industry associates. After a simple service at Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church, the casket was borne by relatives, including the victim's brother Robert Brown, to a waiting hearse. Mourners, obviously still deeply distressed by the murder, consoled each other. The 49-year-old trainer was shot at his home in Black Hill early on the morning of the 26th. Among the mourners, Brown's de facto wife, 24-year-old Robin Hull, who was with the victim on the night of the shooting. Mr Brown's body was taken to Newcastle crematorium. His killer remains at large despite extensive police inquiries.
Jim Coleman is 52 years old. His days are spent in a hospital bed at Royal Newcastle with wife Redora at his side. The federal government has now admitted that Jim's illness, acute myeloid leukemia, is linked to the 14 months he spent at the British nuclear testing site at Maralinga in the South Australian desert in the early 1960s.
I was a mechanical transport fitter looking after and maintaining equipment sent to the forward areas where they sent off atomic explosions, including plutonium, expressly plutonium explosives.
Along with hundreds of Australian and British servicemen, Jim Coleman was totally unaware of the danger at the test site. In those days, he says, he thought the government could do no wrong. Now, he sees differently.
The government should be held negligible for what they did to me. That's what it's all about. I'm taking him to court.
The former Hunter Water Board employee has fought long and hard to convince the government that his time at Maralinga was a death sentence. Federal Cabinet's decision to grant him and a handful of his workmates compensation is only a partial victory. He still awaits the outcome of a common law action against the government for damages. He's also fighting immigration authorities who've refused to grant resident status to his Filipino brother-in-law.
I don't give up. Whether I've got enough time, it's got very little to do with it. I've got a wife and a child. I'll tell you what, not until every shred of evidence comes out will I be satisfied.
In Schoolboys soccer, this is the trophy everyone wants to win. With 414 teams competing from 4 different states, the final of the Bill Turner's Cup had promised to be a quality match, and that it was. Umina in the maroon strip had the running with a goal from Matthew Highway in the first half, but after 40 minutes of football, the Central Coast players lacked the lustre they needed to keep the lead. After repeated raids, Cambridge Park striker Loxley drew the keeper and put the ball into an empty net. 1-1. The Reds kept attacking, putting immense pressure on the Umina's defence. And finally, with only minutes to spare, Loxley was again on the ball, giving the cup to Cambridge 2-1. It was a frustrating result for Umina, who only 2 years ago lost the final 1-0 to Kogarah.
It's somewhere between a motel and a caravan, a self-contained architect-designed cabin with all the mod cons. Within 2 years, the Newcastle Caravan Park in Mayfield will boast 30 of these units.
It's a niche there that had to be met. Canberra, for instance, has accommodation in cabins, so does Melbourne and Sydney and Adelaide that I know of. So it seems to be a thing that's coming on now.
For close to 30 years, this site was a traditional but somewhat run-down caravan park. Times have changed, and the old Walsh Caravan Park has been renamed and revamped. The owners have mapped out an ambitious development, which they hope will signal a new direction in budget accommodation in the city.
That's what we're aiming for. I'm actively involved on the Tourist Association as a member, and also the Chamber of Commerce and the Tourist Committee, and I'm going to emphasise the fact that we do improve our accommodation. Let's get rid of the mushroom image of rooms in Newcastle and the old style of buildings, and renovate the existing that we have here now to accommodate for people.
The developers say they're not directly competing with established motels and hotels. Instead, they're tapping a budget tourist market, which has been ignored up until now.
Senior Highway Patrol officers from Region North looked justifiably pleased with the latest road toll figures. While the state registered a 10% drop in fatalities, Region North was closer to 23%. The road toll in Newcastle last year was 26 killed. In the past 8 months, that's down to just 12, a drop of 54%. Newcastle Police District Commander Superintendent Russ Cook says he believes the figure will stay low for the remainder of the year.
Well, Christmas is usually a bad time of the year, but I do think that the public are more aware of the problems that are associated with drinking and driving, and I don't think that this year that we're going to run into the same trouble that we have in other years. It's the holiday period, of course, and there's a lot more people on the roads, but it'll get a lot of attention, and with the assistance of the public, I think we can keep the road toll down.
Commander of Region North, Assistant Commissioner Charlie Parsons, told today's forum that the Highway Patrol's emphasis must shift from enforcement to driver education. He said the road toll in NBN TV's viewing area had halved, and this was due partly to the station's commitment to driver education, especially through the Drive Alive campaign. Drive Alive host and NBN News editor Jim Sullivan was presented with a citation recognising the station's support of the police road safety campaign. Meanwhile, police will maintain a high profile on the roads, with 2 enforcement projects expected within months. The first will focus on seatbelt use, and the second will be another crackdown on speeding.
Nearly 100 primary school athletes from 4 different states today completed the last day of competition at the West Lakes Fields. Although the competition was national, only 4 states competed. Highlight of the day was the 11-year-olds girls individual final. Throughout the athletic circles, the New South Wales team is being tipped as future national representatives.
Probably a little bit early at 11. If they're still around in a few years' time, say 14, they're still performing the way they are now, I'd say most definitely, yes.
Winner of today's 11-year-old group was Amanda Satara, who defeated her New South Wales teammate Vanessa King by 0.22 of a second, completing the 3-kilometre course in 10 minutes and 47 seconds. Overall winner of the competition was New South Wales, clearly ahead of Victoria, the ACT and South Australia.
Security at the Port of Newcastle has been an issue since July, when Federal Customs Minister Barry Jones and State Police Minister Ted Pickering locked horns over the level of customs staffing. The Police Minister decried what he called inadequate patrols of the harbour, which he said left the city and the state open to drug traffickers. Now, Barry Jones has released results of his inquiry into security at both Newcastle and Port Kembla. His conclusion: enforcement objectives are being hindered by very poor security arrangements. Most berths, he says, are virtually open country. The Minister applauded steps by the newly formed Newcastle Port Security System to begin work on fencing around the harbour, but he said more needed to be done here and at Port Kembla. There is, he said, a clear need for secure perimeter fencing and gates. The Minister did, however, endorse plans to end 24-hour patrols of the port in favour of the new targeting strategy based on intelligence gathering rather than random patrols.